AEW Executive Vice Presidents, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega still have not heard anything about a possible AEW return amidst possible legal action impending in the future. We're going to talk about that. Plus, Bandido had a fantastic match against Chris Jericho this week. He has subsequently been offered a full-time AEW contract. We're going to talk a little bit about the ratings from Dynamite this week. Andrade seemingly wants out of All Elite Wrestling, and the ticket sales aren't looking good for AEW. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. I know we had a video actually drop earlier today. It was actually yesterday's AEW news video. Just at the time it was about to get released yesterday, we had some new White Rabbit information, so we have to drop that, push the AEW news video to this morning. So that's what we did. We're going to have an AEW news video right now, plus our latest WWE updates later on this evening as well. So it's a 3-video day. It's a busy day ahead, trying to give you all of that content that you love. Let's talk about Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, of course, still suspended by AEW after that brawl following All Out and the media scrum comments by CM Punk, who of course is still suspended alongside Ace Steel. Punk also out of action with an injury. He subsequently, after All Out, underwent tricep surgery for a torn triceps he suffered in the main event of the aforementioned event against Jon Moxley in the main event. But for those wanting or waiting for some kind of news regarding Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks after they were suspended from AEW after All Out, it appears like the trio is also waiting for some kind of news. According to the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter written by Dave Meltzer, none of the men had heard anything regarding when they may be unsuspended and therefore able to return to the ring. This is what Dave Meltzer had to say, quote, "Regarding the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, they all hadn't heard anything from the company, at least as of a few days ago. The company hasn't and won't address anything regarding pretty much anything these days on these types of subjects, but the belief is that their situation is on hold pending potential legal action, which, unless cleared up, could delay things for some time, and there is also a second hold-up that hasn't been made clear." Now, we'll talk about those comments in a second because I think they're really interesting what Meltzer is saying there. But of course, former AEW World Champion CM Punk is also suspended. We posted the picture on one of the news videos we did this week. He was pictured this past week in an arm brace, confirming prior reports he had suffered a torn triceps muscle in the match prior to the infamous backstage fight with Omega and the Bucks. The assumption is he's going to be out of action for at least 8 to 9 months if he ever returns to a professional wrestling ring again for All Elite Wrestling. His status with the company is certainly still up in the air. Matt Jackson, this week, one half of the Young Bucks, did post a story on Instagram this past week suggesting he would be seeing fans, quote, very soon, but it isn't clear what that actually means. If Meltzer's report is anything to go by, we might not see Omega or the Bucks for a really long time. Now, I've brought this up a couple of times when we've been talking about the events of CM Punk and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Ace Steel, that the reason that AEW is being particularly protective throughout all of this, and this was the reason why people like Christopher Daniels, people like Pat Buck, people like Michael Nakazawa, people like Brandon Cutler, this was the reason why they were all suspended at the start. AEW, clearly, Tony Khan, Mega Parek, who of course is the chief legal officer of AEW, who was there witnessing the brawl happen right in front of us. She has an eyewitness testimony to the events. They've probably spoken to their team of attorneys, their team of lawyers, and said, there is a high chance, and we've reported on this in the past here, there is a high chance someone is going to sue someone coming out of this. There is going to be legal action from someone. There are so many different parties at play here. It would be, frankly, somewhat of a miracle if there isn't at least the slightest form of litigation involved. Because let's face it, the chances are someone's going to get fired. And we have heard so many differing accounts of what happened that night in Chicago. They started it. They threw the first punch. They kicked the door down. This person bit that person. This person pulled this person's hair. This person's wife was in the room at the time. This was going on. This person saw everything. This person didn't see all of it. This person heard something in the next room. With all of that going on, with all of that drama, if, let's say, hypothetically, and this isn't the case right now, but let's say hypothetically, CM Punk gets fired, well, he might have 2 or 3 years left on a contract on the table, and he might think that the grounds that he was fired or dismissed for weren't actually proper grounds for him to be fired, and he would want the remainder of the money that's on his contract. And then he could then sue AEW, say wrongful termination, or he could sue AEW and say it was an unsafe work environment, or You could have the Young Bucks possibly sue CM Punk and say, he threw the first punch, he attacked me, I want to sue him for damages and, damage to my well-being or whatever it may be. There could be litigation from so many people involved. There could be people like Ace Steel who could sue people. There could be Ace Steel's wife, if she got caught in the crossfire of all of this. There are so many different avenues and different legal cases, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the exact things or the exact roads they could go down, but chances are, once you get lawyers involved, there's so many different things they could get involved in. I mean, CM Punk, he was furious about stories in the first place. He might try and sue for defamation. He might try and sue for the Bucks allegedly leaking stuff out to the wrestling media. There are so many different routes this can go down, and I think that what Dave Meltzer is alluding to here, and you have to remember as well, if Dave Meltzer's reporting this, chances are he's either spoken to Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, or Kenny Omega, or someone very, very, very close to them, or maybe even Tony Khan himself. Dave Meltzer has contacts with all of these people, and that's why when I've been saying about how Meltzer and Brian Alvarez have been reporting on this story from the get-go, that you have to take it with a pinch of salt because they are skewed and swayed to one side of things, and that is the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega side of things. So if Dave Meltzer is saying they haven't heard anything, that's because Dave Meltzer's picked up the phone or sent them a message and said, hey, when you're coming back, what have you heard? What's the timeline looking like? And they've come back to him and said, we've heard nothing. Radio silence. And people might look at it and say, oh, see, I've been talking about how difficult it is to get in touch with Tony Khan, and Tony Khan's not talking to anyone. No, it's probably, in this case, it's probably a case of the legal people within All Elite Wrestling are saying to Tony Khan and the key decision makers in that company, don't talk to anyone. Because if you talk to someone and something's on the record, it can be used against us later on if there is litigation. And that isn't to say that there's going to be litigation from the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega side of things, but if Tony Khan sends an iMessage to Kenny Omega and says, don't worry, we're going to get Phil out of the company, you'll be back soon. If CM Punk then sues AEW or sues Tony Khan and subpoenas Tony Khan's phone record and says, hey, look, there's a message here, or it's in Discovery, there's a message here saying you wanted to kick me out of the company. The legal people right now are probably saying to everyone, don't say anything, don't talk, don't say anything, don't write anything down, because this still could go many different ways. And I think that's essentially what Meltzer is alluding to. I don't see a situation where the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are going to sue CM Punk. Maybe, depending on how it goes regarding Punk's future, I don't know. But if Dave Meltzer is saying the belief is their situation is on hold, pending potential legal action, chances are, the way that I look at it, is maybe, and CM Punk allegedly has been a litigious person in the past, possibly he could be preparing something. Possibly he could be thinking or having discussions with Tony Khan. We've heard the rumors about a potential buyout of his contract with Tony Khan, and maybe Tony Khan and CM Punk are trying to negotiate that now. Maybe Punk's like, I don't want to come back, but there's still money on the table. Maybe Tony Khan's saying to CM Punk, we don't want you back, but there's still money on the table. There's still a contract at play here. Let's negotiate. Let's figure this out, and let's not involve lawyers. Let's not have to go to a trial. Let's not have to get into a civil suit or whatever. So until that happens, there's a bit of a block on everything. And I know from a fan's perspective, that can be frustrating because pro wrestling fans, we have the shortest attention span in the world. We want things done and solved and resolved very quickly. But unfortunately now, once the event's happened and we're still dealing with the ripple effects since it, this stuff will take a while. And it's unfortunate for the Bucks and Omega because they're kind of frozen at this point. They're kind of frozen in time. They can't do anything. But that's the legal system. If you start getting the legal system involved, stuff stops and it stands still and it takes a lot of time. Now, this second thing, when I'm saying the second hold-up that hasn't been made clear, we don't know. We ultimately don't know what's going on there. But it would appear, according to Dave Meltzer and according to the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, they don't know what's going on either. So keep an eye out because I think things will continue when it comes to that one. So that's the latest about Omega and the Bucks. They haven't heard anything, and they don't know what's going to happen next. Bandido had a really, really impressive match this past week against Chris Jericho. Main event of Dynamite. It was fantastic. Absolutely brilliant, absolutely incredible. And Bandido, the former Ring of Honor World Champion, apparently has an offer. According to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, Bandido has indeed been offered a full-time contract with All Elite Wrestling following Wednesday's edition of Dynamite on TBS. Now, it's not been reported or confirmed if he's officially signed with AEW. Chances are, if he has, when he has, or if he does decide to sign, we'll get the graphic of Tony Khan saying that Bandido is All Elite. As I mentioned, he competed in the main event of Wednesday's AEW Dynamite, challenging Chris Jericho for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Bandido came up short in his quest to regain the Ring of Honor World Championship, but Jericho had kind things to say about Bandido after the bout, and he shared a hug with Tony Khan after the show went off the air. I think that, you know, if this is the thing, isn't it, that I think he's got a lot of bookings, so I don't think it's a case of he has to take the contract from AEW, but the only thing I would say is, as I look on the AEW landscape going forward, where does Bandido fit in that? I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. You could argue he could go into the Andrade Al Idolo Roos situation, but why? Why would he go into that? I don't see that as a realistic part. I mean, look, I thought his performance was absolutely fantastic against Jericho, as I mentioned. Some of the spots he was doing, one-handed press slam, when he had that sort of moonsault fall-away slam spot off the top rope, I thought was unbelievable, absolutely incredible. And I can't say that I was totally familiar with a lot of his work from his Ring of Honor days. I saw the match, obviously, he had against Jonathan Gresham, and I thought Supercard of Honor, and I thought that was excellent. But the performance against Jericho this week was absolutely brilliant. And I think also, you do have to credit Chris Jericho. I know people don't like Jericho for whatever reason, or they say he's cringy, or they say he's past it, or whatever. The guy's, 52 years old, and he's still having really good matches in the main event of a weekly primetime broadcast wrestling show on a major cable network. That's no mean feat. And, I know people say, he's got good opponents in the ring, but it takes two to tango. You can't just have someone carry you through a match. And Jericho is having fantastic matches. Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley, Bandido, these Claudio Castagnoli. He's having brilliant matches, and I'm still not sold on the Jericho Appreciation Society stuff. I don't think it's the best iteration of Jericho, and there have been many. I don't think it's the best iteration, because to be honest, I thought the opening segment of Dynamite was not good. It felt like a segment that wasn't supposed to be there. There were changes, of course, because of the Hurricane Ian this week. But in terms of in-ring, Jericho's better than he's been in a long time. Physically, he looks fantastic. Obviously, he had a health scare, and now he's really turned it around in terms of his physical look and his diet and his exercise, and that's tremendous to see. But I would still hope that he kind of moves a bit more away. I just don't think Jericho needs a stable. That's my thing. Maybe he has a couple of people around him, like Guevara, because they're just constantly associated with him, or he's got his muscle in Jake Hager. But he doesn't need a giant stable. He doesn't need a tag team. He doesn't need that. It feels like a crutch at this point for Jericho, in my opinion. But there you go. But if we get any update about Bandido possibly accepting the contract of AEW, we'll talk about it here on the channel. Speaking of Dynamite this week, we have the ratings, and I guess as to be expected, it was a little bit down. Dynamite couldn't maintain its streak of 1 million viewer shows on Wednesday night, but it does have a good reason, of course, with many eyes that were fixed on Hurricane Ian's arrival on Florida's Gulf Coast. Of course, as I mentioned yesterday, thoughts and prayers are going out to everyone affected. The carnage left in behind in the wake, rather, of the hurricane was just awful. So hopefully everyone's okay there. Now, WrestleNomics has shared viewership information for Wednesday, and the September 28th episode was watched by an average of 990,000 viewers, down 5% from last week's Grand Slam special. It's actually the lowest for the program since August 17. The key demographic also suffered as Dynamite was watched by 444,000 viewers aged 18 to 49, delivering a 0.34 rating in the 18 to 49 demo, which is down 3%. Dynamite finds itself down in the rankings this week in the cable originals due to the coverage of Hurricane Ian. Dynamite actually ranked 9th in the key demographic for broadcast primetime. It actually ranked 20. Now, it must be said, the Weather Channel dominated, as I mentioned, because of that Hurricane Ian coverage. The Weather Channel took 7 of the 8 spots in the top 10 as people were tuned in for the coverage of that. So it's kind of difficult to judge. I mean, a year makes quite a difference on this. The September 29, 2021 episode of Dynamite had a total viewership of 1.152 million viewers, which of course is 14% higher Then this past week, the key demographic is down 24%. Last year it had a 0.45 rating. However, it must be said, last year's Dynamite was not contending a near Category 5 Hurricane. It was Category 4, close to Category 5, wasn't it? So I would say that it's difficult to judge this week's episode. It's difficult to judge this week's episode in terms of the ratings, the viewership. It's also difficult to judge in terms of the quality because there were aspects of the show missing as well, and it was kind of put together at the last minute. So I'm not going to be too harsh on Dynamite this week. At points, I thought some of the matches were good, but I thought some of the segments were really bad as well. Andrade, been a lot of discussion about Andrade's future in AEW, and it would appear that Andrade would like freedom. Is Andrade out Idolo in the midst of a social media campaign to get himself out of AEW, or is he running a troll on his followers? Not a person can determine exactly what Andrade is doing, but it's pretty clear he's up to one of these two scenarios. The latest sign is a tweet Andrade posted early in the morning a couple of days ago, where the former CMLL star kept his words short and simple, saying simply, quote, hashtag free out Idolo. Now, by itself, it would appear that Andrade is looking for a way out of AEW, but with Andrade, there is always more, which is why the tweet also included a video of Andrade looking out into a beautiful ocean view whilst holding a nice cup of coffee. As such, it leaves fans to ponder whether it was initially meaning what they thought or if it was just something else. Now, there have been mixed signals on Andrade when it comes to social media. Last week, Andrade posted another tweet with an hourglass counting down, possibly hinting he was looking a way out. Only days later, Jose the assistant, Andrade's assistant, guessed it, posted a tweet of his own with an hourglass, hinting at the potential they are running some kind of hourglass-based storyline. Who knows? Whatever is going on, he was seen on Dynamite this week arguing with the Andrade family office members' private party before leaving Jose to keep Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn in line. He is going to appear on Rampage this coming Friday tonight in the corner of Roosh as he takes on the Dark Order's John Silver. I don't know what Andrade wants to do. I don't think he's happy. I don't think that's a stretch to say. I think he's been liking tweets saying he's been underused, and he has been kind of underused. Well, no, he has been underused since he came into AEW. The biggest thing he's done since he left WWE was team up with Ric Flair. You know, and that wasn't even an AEW thing. That was for Ric Flair's thing. So, I'm sure, given his history of Triple H, he thinks he could go back to WWE. Would he be better off there? Probably. To be fair, he was probably better off in WWE in terms of the stuff he's done in Dynamite since, really. You know, he's United States champion for a long time. Of course, it didn't end well with him in WWE, but I wouldn't say the grass has been greener for him in AEW, and maybe that's why he wants out. Finally, ticket sales aren't looking good for AEW, to put it bluntly. Now, AEW is currently facing, quote, brutal ticket sales for upcoming live shows, despite an eventful few weeks, both on and off screen. The promotion has a number of notable events coming up, and Dave Meltzer has commented on the ticket sales figures for several tapings in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. This includes the October 5 Dynamite Anniversary show in Washington, D.C. As of that report, 2,265 tickets have been distributed for the October 5th show. The October 7th Rampage and Battle of the Belts 4 special taping hasn't sold as many tickets, with 1,988 distributed. While several other shows have had seemingly disappointing ticket advances, it was noted that the October 12 AEW Dynamite taping in Toronto, Canada has almost sold out, with 6,783 tickets distributed. Breaking down the numbers, Meltzer wrote, quote, the upcoming advances do not tell a good story at all. Dynamite in Washington, D.C. is at 2,265. Rampage / Battle of the Belts in the same building is at 1,988. They noted DC as the anniversary show in the same building the first Dynamite aired, which did more than 14,000 fans and sold out instantly. The hope that the great atmosphere and Arthur Ashe Stadium show would get live business back on track hasn't shown up yet. October 12th in Toronto is basically sold out at 6,783, but the Rampage show on October 13 is at 4,853. Part of that may be that Rampage isn't on television in Canada, so its name value is nil, because the demand for Dynamite was off the chart and was an immediate sellout, but the people turned away could have gotten Rampage tickets and most chose not to. The October 18 for the Tuesday show in Cincinnati with Moxley versus Adam Page is at 3,053 at the Heritage Bank Center, which is not good. October 21 Rampage in Jacksonville is at 2,250. October 26 in Norfolk is at 2,217, way down from the last show. October 28 in Connecticut at the Mohegan Sun Casino is at 3,768. November 2nd in Baltimore is at 1,525, which shocks me for the market. November 4 in Atlantic City, New Jersey is at 776, which is brutal, especially since they did 5,500 paid and 5,900 in the building in February in the same arena. November 9 in Boston is at 2,322, about half of what it was in the same building last time they were there, and Boston has sold out every prior AEW show quickly. So that is... I mean, it is pretty damning stuff, it must be said. There's still time to go, but it would appear that what I've been kind of saying, and this isn't me going, I told you so, I told you so. I think it's just obvious that AEW is not hot. It's not hot right now, and it wasn't hot anyway going into All Out. All the stuff happened at All Out, and whilst it may have given them a bit of a bounce initially, in terms of the fallout of that, it doesn't feel like the place to be. It doesn't feel like the TV show to watch. The idea or element of it being must-see has declined, and the idea of going to the tapings because it was different and it was unique doesn't really feel like that. And WWE, that cool factor's back in WWE's court, really. It really is, you know. WWE for years wasn't the cool product. It was the mainstream product. It was the New York Yankees, but that's why people watched it. But it wasn't cool, and now it does feel cool again. It feels hip. Triple H is doing a good job. They're selling a ton of tickets. People are watching the shows. And AEW just feels like, I don't know, the lesser promotion, colder. It's difficult to say, and I think the ticket sales are starting to reflect that. So there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW news. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.